Hey guys, Kendra Chapman here with the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast. This week, I'm sitting down with Colin Corby, CEO and founder of Technology Wellbeing LTD and creator of the Digital Detox Coach. Colin is a technologist, TEDx speaker, digital well-being coach, and endurance athlete helping people build healthier, more intentional lives with technology. Let's get started. Well, Colin, I want to welcome you to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes. I want to first ask you, what are you doing these days to choose a little bit of going slow in your day? What does that look like for you?
For me, going slow is taking time for myself. And time for myself is exercising because I do sport. So I make time for my sport. I make time to go to bed early and get some sleep, because if you do sport, it's during sleep that your muscles regenerate and you recover. So I'm an avid supporter of looking after myself, and then I can show up as my best self in terms of work and other activities.
Yes. Before we dive into all things digital detox, I want to make sure that I definitely lean into that a little bit, what you said, because I don't think I don't know, I'm just assuming out there in the world of podcasting and listeners and viewers on YouTube, how we take our sleep for granted. So much of our, regeneration and our rest and recovery, whether you're a triathlete or you're, going hiking or whatever you're doing for exercise or just, living your life, how much we need that sleep and how much our body just does what it needs to do.
Sleep is an amazing thing. And the reason why we struggle with sleep is because we're not consciously aware of it. If we're sleeping properly, we're not consciously aware of it. As far as I'm aware, all animals sleep. And evolution has enabled biological animals to have this balance between what you need as a biological animal in terms of sleep, food, and other activities. For us humans, we have lots of social connection. And it's that balance. And I read somewhere that there's the supercomputers, in order to have roughly the same processing power as the human brain. And it's not an accurate comparison because we do different things. The human brain's about 1 million times more power efficient. So a biological brain and processing is about 1 million times more efficient than what we've created in terms of processing power. And one of the reasons is that we need sleep. So we all know if we miss sleep. So I I went out Saturday evening at a function, and I got back at just after 12, and I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning. Now I survived because I did this triathlon, volunteering at triathlon. But when I got home, I had to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand. Your body knows. And if you listen to your body, then it's going to take care of you and vice versa.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I know that we want to really spend a lot of our time together as we sit down and discuss digital detox and what that means. But your work, I think it's so necessary for us to discuss this topic today, because while one might have heard of digital detox, they may or may not understand it to the level of what we're going to talk about today. And I think we're all going to learn something listening to your research and what you've found through that process. So let's dive in. I'm curious. I want to know a little bit. It can be a little intimidating when you hear your, background as a TEDx speaker and you've done all this research. But can you break it down for everybody? Like, what does digital detox truly mean in this day and age?
Okay, so we all need to be online to live and work in the modern world. So let's get that out of the way for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what we should be striving for is how we do that sustainably. And what I mean by sustainably, it's what do we need as biological humans in order to be at our best and live sustainable and be healthy in the long
Hmm.
term. It's all about being healthy in the long term. So digital detox is my definition. It's a period of time offline. So it can be as short as 20 seconds if you're resting your eyes from staring at a screen, to the classic sort of week away in nature and everything in between. But where I concentrate on is in the normal working day to actually schedule 10 to 15-minute breaks during the day instead of going back to back Zoom calls or back to back meetings. What happens, and Microsoft did some research on their video calls, and they found that what happened when people were doing these back to back activities is you get accumulation of stress. There was no chance to release the stress. They didn't go into the fact that people were ill prepared for their next meeting. No, they're just looking at the stress part of it. So they introduced something in Outlook which allowed you to put 10-minute breaks between them for that purpose. But if we don't do that, we take the stress home with us. And then that affects all of our personal lives as well. So I like to think of being online as almost like being in a sweet shop. Now, I like chocolate. Okay, it's English chocolate. There is some differences between US chocolate and English chocolate, but I like chocolate. And if I'm in a sweet shop, it's going to sell chocolate and I'm going to be tempted. I'm going to probably eat some. So digital detox is about getting us out of the online sweet shop. Now, it isn't enough in itself, because once we're out of the sweet shop, we need to be doing something that we really enjoy. So it's an enabler to allow us to do the things that we really want or need to do. That could be being fully present at a conversation with family members or friends. It could be an activity. It could be reading a book. It doesn't matter what it is as long as we enjoy it. So the digital detox and digital well-being are interchangeable in many ways, but it allows us to say we've left the online and we've gone offline. The other benefit of that is, of course, on the online world, we've got all of this external information and it's demanding our attention. We've got instant messages. We feel we have to respond. So it's very, very fast. When we're offline, we've got enough time to think and we've got enough time to process, because the deeper skills in the human brain just take longer. And that's why reading physical books is so good, because you can get into the character. You can feel what the character is feeling. So we just need time. So it's about slowing down. But the best part
Yeah.
of it is, if we take the breaks, we're better at work. We're more productive.
Yes. Right. Yes. The true meaning of going slow to go fast is just in that one sentence of, if you're able to be offline for a period of time, whatever that looks like for you, you will do more productivity and more things with, focus in the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, our attention spans have been reducing online. And I think Professor Gloria Mark did some wonderful research for information workers. And she found that the attention span had reduced from something like 2.5 minutes to just 47 seconds. But she did an amazing thing. She had managed to persuade one company to turn off the emails for one day for one group of people. And the attention spans rose again. Not to the 2.5 minutes, but it was much better than 47 seconds.
And that was just one day of emails
Yeah.
silenced. Okay. Interesting. Can you imagine if you go on a retreat for, once a quarter for one
Yeah.
day? Okay.
I mean,
That's
a lot of
interesting.
people feel it necessary, even when they're on their holidays or with the family, to have their work phone out. Now, in the
Hmm.
US, it's much more prevalent than in Western Europe.
Mm.
But
I've heard that. I just didn't really know if you would agree with that finding. So you do see that as the Americans tend to let that interrupt their day and live that way more
yeah,
than anybody else.
because in the US, it's almost like a badge of honor how many hours can you work? Are you fully available and all those sorts of things. But in European country, the research is saying, well, you're just not as good. A lot of companies say we have lots of holiday in Europe, so apologies for that. But you need to be away from work to recover and be at your best at work. Imagine going to a hospital and the surgeon had been working all hours, no time for rest and recovery, and it was an important operation. It's probably better not to think about it.
Right. Absolutely. And I can't say what it's like for the doctors in America, but I have a feeling they probably work too many hours as well. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, this is coming from someone who was in the hospital for a week, and I had the hardest time not going on a device. But I knew it was better for me to take the time to recover.
Yes.
That's the whole point. But, if we don't, then our bodies are going to eventually. Like what you were saying, with sleep, if you're doing sleep right, you're not even going to notice because you've slept so well.
I think
So when you have
sleep's the interesting one because if you don't do sleep right, it tells you about it very, very quickly, and the health consequences are rapid. So that's an easy one. But not eating a good diet, you might not notice any effects for years.
So, with your findings, as you've done your research and you've explained what digital detox is in I think, pretty clear detail. And the fact that, you're letting us off the hook a little bit with, we have to be involved in some sort of digital interfacing throughout our day. That's just how the world works now. But it makes sense. And it's not about removing technology completely out of our lives. But like you said, if you just take one day or a couple of minutes or a few hours away, you're going to notice a difference. So, would you say that taking a break is as important as having that human connection while at work, but not on internet or screens? Like, would you say they're just as important, breaks and connection? Or would you
So
just say that?
now here's the thing. It's not either or. So let's say you're taking a break from your screen and you're getting a coffee. Then coffees or water coolers or those sorts of things, human connection for us is vitally important. Real human connection, as in the real world. There's lots of studies. The US Surgeon General issued a report the other year about the loneliness epidemic in the US. And I think he said something like, we're the most connected people ever, but we've got a loneliness epidemic. And the reason is being online is connection is amazing. If you don't live local to people during COVID, it is absolutely essential. But it's not instead of actual connection with other humans. I mean, can you imagine not cuddling your child, for example, in the physical world, trying to do that online? We get so much information when we speak to people. It's not only the words and how they're said, it's facial expressions, it's body position. We have to, and this is why we need to go slower. We have mirror neurons, and in order to feel what the other person feels, we have to take that and imagine what that is. So if you're sad, I can't fully feel that unless I'm a little bit sad myself when I've replicated that. I heard something amazing about when we look at a bird flying, in order to fully appreciate a bird flying, we somehow try and imagine what it would be like for us to fly. And that's how we give meaning to things. And that's so important. We're social animals, and the reason why it's important is its safety, its security. And it goes back to our 400 years, 1,000 years of evolution.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I would think anybody out there listening or watching would be able to, remember back to a time where maybe you had meetings back to back to back online during COVID. We remember what that felt like. And hopefully that's not what your day looks like now. And hopefully you've been able to reconnect and come back to work and you're in a more social setting more often than not. But, every now and then there are times where we have to have days like that where we're on the computer more than we would like. Would you Do you have any strategies, suggestions, that you wanted to kind of share with the listeners and the viewers to kind of think through their day of like how they might build that out so they could, honor their time and be more productive at the same time?
So there's a very simple thing. Most companies don't really have a communication strategy. And what I mean by that is we might receive an email. It might be urgent, it might not be. We might receive an instant message. We might receive in apps messaging. So all of these are coming all over the place. When we receive these messages, we feel that we've got to answer them with another message, but then we're creating the problem. So what I like people to try, and it gets quite hard. It's easier when you're older. It's very hard when you're younger. If you receive a message from a friend, let's say, instant message, why not give them a call? When you speak to someone using, the old fashioned telephony way of communicating, it's a much deeper form of communication than the written word on a instant message or the pidgin English, which tends to be used on messages or an email. So there are cases where people sitting opposite each other send each other emails.
I know. I've seen it in real life.
So the strategy is when you receive a messages, what is the best way of communicating to get all of the information across? But it takes more effort. So that's simple strategy. Try and bring things back to a more human level. And voice calls there's more connection than a Zoom call. Because there have been some wonderful comedies associated with video calls during COVID. People turning up in their pajamas for calls, eating their
Mm,
breakfast.
mm.
Well, certainly in Europe, I'm not sure about the US.
Oh, yes. We had our
And then
share of them over here.
when they went back into the office, they're trying to sort of change those habits and do the other things. There's some wonderful comedy
Yeah.
associated. So, the,
Yes.
so communication strategy, you don't have to be part of the problem. You can do things differently. And where it becomes really important, let's imagine a younger person joining the workforce. Now, when I joined the workforce, we were all together. And so you built up relationships and those sorts of things. It must be quite difficult to build up a relationship with a colleague over a Zoom call or an email or a message exchange. Whereas actual meeting them and having a voice call with all the extra information that those communications methods contain is much easier to establish those relationships. And older people, it's really, really important for older people to be mentors in human relationships because a lot of younger people won't have had the practice.
It's true. Very true. I've seen that in the workplace. I mean, now more than ever, we probably have at least 4 generations in the workplace, if not more. In my experience, people are working longer. And then, as we see younger people come into the workplace, they don't know how to interact socially all the time. Just the things that we take for granted if we're a little bit older. So that's so true. Besides the human connection and disrupting maybe the way someone chooses to communicate with you and, reciprocating in a different way, um, is there anything else that you think that the listeners and the viewers need to hear or see that might, kind of get them thinking differently that maybe
Yeah.
they haven't heard before?
So mindset change.
Mm,
The difficulty with any self-care message is that in many quarters, it's considered a weakness.
mm-hmm.
Culturally, it's considered a weakness. oh, I need some self-care. I can't be good
Right.
enough or must be weaker. And it's a real issue. So
Mhm.
in my talks and using my own experiences for on endurance events, I put the proposition of being business athletes,
Mm.
digital detox athletes,
Mhm.
because generally we know that athletes have to get a lot of sleep, eat the right things. They can't train 100% all the time. They have lots of rest and recovery. They have a team of people around them. They have a
Mhm.
different mindset, a growth mindset in the sense of they're taking on board constructive criticisms and suggestions for improvements. It's a
Mhm.
whole different mindset. But everything they do takes time. So if we're talking about changing habits, Professor Wendy Wood did some research and habits take about 66 days, or she found the average. Could be much, much longer, or could be a little bit less, depending on complexity. So everything we want to do for ourselves is going to take effort and it's going
Mhm.
to take time. So I use the analogy with, hey, wouldn't you want to show up as your best? So why not think of yourself as a business athlete? And then
Yeah.
taking regular breaks and looking after yourself isn't a weakness because you're much stronger than everybody else by doing that and getting that sort of mindset change, and especially with leaders. Because they set examples. It gets progressively harder depending on where you are in an organization. But just to think, do you know what? I'm an athlete. And I've got to look after myself because I really want to do that presentation. I want to do that talk. I want to, do that operation. I want to be at my best and, and set an example by being a digital detox athlete or a business athlete. So I think that's what I've tried to communicate because, nobody's really paying much attention to get a load of sleep, get enough sleep, diets, and all those other things. So is there a way of changing the way we talk about it? And so
Mhm.
I do the business athlete idea, and that
Mhm.
seems to get some traction. And people
Yeah,
like,
because it is a different way of thinking. We're used to hearing you need to be physically fit. But I can't say I've ever heard anybody say that you need to be mentally fit or have a mindset fitness routine.
yes, because we forget that our minds and bodies are connected. So if we are physically fit, that means our hearts are fitter. Very simply, our hearts pump blood to the brain. The blood contains oxygen. We're much better. So if we're at our desk, and particularly in the afternoon, there's a slot in the afternoon that's a little bit difficult, where our biorhythms have sort of sunk a bit. The best way of restoring your focus and attention is to get up and move about. The blood starts flowing again, the oxygen gets back to the brain, and we're able to perform better. So this idea that somehow our consciousness is a bit like a computer is completely wrong. Everything is connected. So you look after the body to look after the mind. You look after the mind to look after the body. That is all interconnected. Especially as you get older, because culturally, a lot of people think of age not in terms of capabilities, but in terms of what they remember when they were young of older people. And that expectation means people unnecessarily slow down, don't do as much, think they're not able to do it. Now, we've got lots of CEOs of multinational companies. We've got politicians well into their 70s. And we vote for them, we follow them, we think they're great. But those same individuals, certainly in companies, think if you're over 50, somehow you haven't got the energy. Where did that come from? I think the data, certainly in the UK, is that um, by 70, it's equivalent to roughly, 60. But I had a fun thing. I did a talk at the London Excel Centre, and it was a business sports industry one. And before my talk, I went round and they did one of these oxygen gas tests. Took 10 minutes. And it must have upset the algorithm because I came out 11 years younger. And that's by being a sports person. Now, and so I'm mostly a swimmer. All that's saying is, I mean, that's not necessarily right because the human body is so complex. That really isn't a real answer. But in certain aspects, parts of the body appear to be younger. And the great thing about exercise is that you destroy muscles and they regrow. And there's starting to be a little bit of evidence that say that process of constant renewal is helpful in the aging process, certainly with mental health. The
Hmm.
UK Alzheimer's Organization charity say the best thing you can do for your long-term mental health is to exercise. And it can delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease and other aspects. Maybe because the blood and the oxygen levels, it's flushing out the brain. So, yeah, so being in touch with our bodies is, in the long term, a very good thing. We don't know how long we're going to live. We don't know what hands we've been dealt or we'll be lucky. But putting all those to aside, what can we do ourselves? Then looking after our bodies is in our control.
Yes, absolutely. So for, a busy, let's say mom out there who has a million things going on, kids are going this way and that. They've got to drop the kids off and then go do their thing and then pick the kids up at school. Then the kids come home. Do you have any suggestions for like setting boundaries, maybe in the home with kids, having to get online maybe once in a while for homework, but just the devices? And, it's a selfish question coming from a mom of kids who are starting to really want to do a lot of video games and they have their screens, and I'm just limiting as much as possible. Any suggestions maybe for parents out there these days?
So, and this is going to be a hard thing because uh, parents have got to set the example. So you can set boundaries. The easy boundary is meal times, but it has to apply to everybody. You might have other times of the day or activities, and you can say, look, none of us, we've got a family agreement that we're actually focused on this together. And it's just as hard for the parents as it is for the children. But that's a very simple piece of advice. It involves the parent, involves the family. When you go out with friends, when you go to a cafe or restaurant, agree with your friends that actually we want to be with you. You're my best friend. I want to be fully present with you. Let's agree that we're not going to use the phone. And because it's amongst adult friends, you can set up some forfeits, some funny forfeits, because we're going to be caught out. So have some funny forfeits, which then make it funny. So there's no blame. It's funny. Oh, I didn't manage it and all the rest of it. You won't, maybe. But in the family situation, if you've got a child wanting attention from a parent and the parent's on the phone, there's a sort of rejection process going on. And that causes lots of complications. So the other thing I'd say is whenever you can, because busy parents can't do this all the time, don't multitask. The human brain can't actually multitask, which is using the same cognitive resources for more than one thing. It's a bit like there was a lovely book called The Memory Illusion, and she described the analogy of an orchestra. An orchestra can only play one tune at a time. If you want to play a different tune, it has to stop and play the new tune. That's because there are different frequencies associated with it. Of course, so to be at your best and be fully present, you have to focus on that one thing. Now, of course, we can do things that are not really using the same cognitive resources like walking and talking and those sorts of things. Researchers found that people looking at their phone tend to bump into things more often. And when we're in the, and when we're driving and a situation comes up where we need to pay attention, we stop
Mm,
talking to our passengers. It's
mm,
automatic. Once it's
mm,
something important, we
mm.
can own one thing at a time.
Yes. I mean, I can remember there were people that were doing contracts where they would sign saying they weren't going to use devices while they drive. And I think some vehicles along the way with technology have gotten to the point where they try to really cancel that out. But people still text and drive. I mean,
But I don't
so
know in I don't know in the US, but certainly in the UK and probably in Europe,
mhm.
it's illegal. You can get stopped and have points. And the reason is that you're not paying attention to the road. And not paying attention is dangerous not only for you, but for everybody around you. But people still do it. And we've had that in place for at least 10 years.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I mean, in some major cities and, DC, I know Washington, DC, and, in Nashville, you can't text and drive. You'll be pulled over. But, people still do it outside of the city or in the city, depending. So, yeah, the human behavior is always going to find a way around certain parameters. But I think if we're just more mindful, like you said,
But
thinking about,
a lot of those things we're acting on autopilot.
mm,
So out of habits.
mm,
And that's so ingrained because we've been on our smartphone. I mean, the first Apple iPhone was 2007. And in a very short period of time, relatively speaking, we've all done the same things on our smartphones every day for years. So, in order to change that, and it comes back to this athlete idea, you can't run a marathon on day one. If you're going to run a marathon, you've got to have a training program and you've got to have lots and lots of practice. And then, generally speaking, if your health is good, most people, if they really want to, could finish a marathon if they did the right training. And with better digital habits, you can do the same, but it takes time and effort. And that's the thing I try and get across. There's instant gratification on technology on the one hand, there's a lot of hard work and effort on the other, but
absolutely.
the rewards are so much greater.
Yeah. Just like working out, just like exercise, it takes discipline. It takes consistency. It takes commitment, all the things that one would
Mm.
add into their day if they were an athlete. So if we can think about being a business athlete, that's going to be a little bit of I think definitely a shift for me thinking about being uh, a digital athlete, business athlete as I work forward in my process. That's going to be very helpful, especially as my parent hat needs to come on once in a while and model the same. Yes.
It's very hard when you've got children because you've got on
Mm,
demand, you've got multiple demands, but there are
hmm.
times when you can read a book with a child, or you can help them with
Yes.
their homework. I mean, I've got a grandchild now, and I'm thinking I need to be much fitter
Yeah.
because
Yes.
they need so
Absolutely.
much attention.
Yes. Well, and I think like you said, when you go out with your friends, you have like fun things that will, you'll agree to if someone breaks the rule that you set in place. You could do the same with kids, come up with an agreement. And if someone breaks that rule, then we have a funny, consequence
The
that
idea of so with young children, it is because their brains are still growing. The skills that we develop when we're young are based on our experiences. The experiences of mixing with other humans, the family environment, friends, the outside, everything. It's all about experiences. And as the brain develops in all its different stages, then all of those experiences hold us hopefully in good stead for adult life. If a lot of those experiences are sitting down looking at a screen, that's what's going into children. And I know in the US and in Europe, they're now thinking it's a bad idea to have phones in schools. It really is. It's taken us a while to get there, uh, but it's
it
just a bad.
has. Yeah. And I think half the time we have to go through the process to see whether or not it's going to be a good idea, gather the data, evaluate it, and then figure out, what we want, what we value. But
Yeah,
it's
and now
taken us a minute.
and now it's even more important because all of our phones have got AI. And that so we outsource our knowledge and skills because the AI can do some of the thinking. But you imagine, um, well, I learned things in mathematics, which is no longer taught in schools because there's an easy way. I'm not saying the hard way was the right way. I'm just saying that it's changed. But imagine you don't have to take on board all the knowledge and skills that you could outsource it. What that means is you don't have them inside you to use in later life. So when you try and problem solve or be creative or just live your life, you don't have that knowledge and skills inside of you. You're dependent on something else. It's a more extreme version of the sat nav or Google Maps thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were cleaning out a space in our house yesterday, and one of my boys was helping me, and I had a map of London, funnily enough. And my son was like, "Why do you need this when you have your phone?" And I was like, "Well, when I bought that map, I didn't have a phone. It's been probably 20 plus years since I bought that map." And I said, and it would probably still be useful, although some things have probably changed in London. I'm sure that the major pieces,
Yeah.
the tower and the bridge and all the things, they're still there. So we could probably use that map. But it's just so funny the way that they think. And,
But maps are very interesting because some of the researchers suggest that if you look at memory, how did memory evolve in the animals? And one of the most important things for memory is to know where you are and to know where and have this spatial awareness of where danger might be or where food might. And I think I can't remember the names, but there was a Nobel Prize given out for being able to identify these particular aspects of the brain that had this spatial awareness. Now, you get that spatial awareness by observation, and part of that observation is using paper maps. That's how it works. If you use Google Maps or a sat nav in a car, all you're doing is following the next instruction.
right,
It's a
right.
simple.
Yeah. And it'll recalculate sometimes, but there are times where you don't have connection and you're going to need to use other skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all
Yeah.
about the modern world, and the future of work is all about getting knowledge and skills inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
Digital transformation of the workplace, it's replacing many parts of everybody's job. And a lot of those AI tools are amazing. Certainly in the
Mm-hmm.
medical field, absolutely amazing. In education, for example, there are AI tools, and providing they encourage students to have knowledge and skills within themselves, they'll be great as well. But they don't replace
Yes.
teachers
No, the building blocks need to be there first. Yes.
So all of these things are going on. You have to ask yourself the question, well, what about humans and what is our role? Well, actually, the online world is an artificial construct. It's something we created, most complicated thing ever, but it's a bit two-dimensional when you compare it with walking outside, the environment, with all of the things that can happen. Humans evolved to exist and make decisions at the edge of chaos. And all other animals do the same thing. We have no idea what's really out there. We have an idea of enough about what's out there in order to survive. So, what is it that the future of work on humans? It has to be that interface with the complete world, and it has to be problem solving, critical thinking, and imagination. The online world is looking at the past in many ways. It's calculating based on the past. But we know that the past is no guarantee of what's going to happen in the future. And averages of averages of averages aren't going to tell you that there was a lovely book on black swans. It's not going to tell you that something out here on the peripheral is going to have a major impact. So humans have got to be imagining things, creating new things. And to do that, we have to sort of practice taking on knowledge and skills ourselves. And those things take time. And that's the premise of going slow to go fast. That's really the slow part of the process. The fast part of the process is those eureka moments where you've solved that problem, you've got a new idea, you've
Hmm.
had some inspiration or motivation to do something.
Right. And a lot of that comes from being bored. So you can be creative and coming off of online interfaces so you can be in touch with the natural world around you and the human connection. But I think,
But there is a way of doing that. So if you've got fine weather and if you're lucky enough in the garden, there's a lovely little challenge where you just choose a spot. It could be in a park, it doesn't matter. And then you sit down, you relax, maybe some breathing exercises, and you're quiet. And then you have to observe 5 things, then listen to 4 sounds. And so you go through a process of focusing your attention. So instead of being bored, what do I do now? I haven't got my phone. You say, okay, this is an exercise to just sort of, what can I see? And what happens is you start to notice little things like little ants on the grass if you're sitting on the grass, which you wouldn't have noticed before. You might notice some smells or some sounds that you didn't notice before. There's one of the tasks is taste, and I'm always worried about that because you have to be
yes,
careful what you taste.
true.
So I
Uh-huh.
think one of my challenges, I got rid of that one.
Yeah. Five senses, but maybe not the taste bud.
Yeah, but actually we've got incredible amount of senses and not just 5. So we've labeled 5, but actually, um, another sense is when you're hungry. So there are a lot of internal senses. What do you feel on your skin when you're sitting in this environment? Instead of just thinking, "Oh, well, I'm bored, I've got nothing to do," then there are some things you can practice so that it isn't so. And people watching. So when people get up their phone, it's because they want to keep themselves busy to shut the outside world away because, well, I don't know what's going to happen. But you could people watch, and if you go to somewhere like Paris and you sit on the Champs Elysees or somewhere like that, buy an expensive drink, and you watch the people go past, or you go into a shopping mall, into a cafe, and do the same thing. It's great, a great thing to do. And what do you notice?
I know, right? My mom lived in New York outside of the city and with her friends when she was growing up. And she used to just go with her friends to the airport. They didn't have a ticket. They would just go to the airport back when you could and not have a ticket and just people watch.
And it's
So,
so interesting because
yeah.
somewhere at an airport is great because you've got people arriving, you've got people because they miss someone, or you've got people leaving, and you've got that emotional tension as well. You've got business people, holiday. Yeah, there's so much
Yes. It's
to
like
see.
that opening with Love Actually, right? Have you seen that movie?
Yes, that's those a very popular movie, but it was a great idea about having these stories really together.
Absolutely. Well, Colin, this has been a great conversation, and I don't want to let you go, but we both have schedules we have to follow. Is there anything else that you want to share before I let you go, just to kind of bring our thoughts together?
So we've mentioned the business athlete or digital detox athlete and the mindset. The other thing is the sweet shop idea. The sweet shop idea comes about environments. Environments trigger our actions, autopilots. So if you change your environment, so if in your house you have, in my TEDx talk, I called it a sanctuary. So if there's somewhere in your house or apartment that you say, well, in this particular room, we don't have digital devices. We have games or books. And everybody who lives in that house or apartment agrees to those rules. And because you change environment, You get rid of all the triggers. So I would leave people the idea you can change what are the things under your control. There's lots of things that aren't under our control, but environments and changing environments. And there's some wonderful research, powerful research on the Vietnam War and people returning. And they were obviously, it's a very stressful environment in Vietnam, and there was a lot of heroin addicts. And so there's all these programs set up in the US to cope with this because heroin is really, really addictive. They were shocked and happily surprised at the change in environment of coming back to the US with workplace, families, and all. They lost that many with rehabilitation programs didn't relapse. And it's a very good piece of research about the power of environments.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more. So literally just changing
Yes,
your
so change your
environment.
environment. Have a sanctuary. You eliminate the triggers because it's our autopilot. Professor Wood, I think it was, who said something like 43% of what we do is on autopilot.
Mm. And that probably includes driving.
Yes, I mean driving would be a real pain if we had to think about it all the time. we have a lot of geared cars in the UK rather than automatics. Now, I know all electric cars are automatic, so that's going to disappear with history. But yeah, so we have that extra bit.
Well, there's a shift going on at least in the parenting world. I'm seeing where there's companies selling corded phones again, and the idea of a landline is coming back. So it's just kind of interesting to see
Yes,
where all that goes.
and I think for parents, you do need to know where your children are, and your children do need to contact you. So the simplified phones are certainly making a comeback, and they meet that need. You don't have to have your phone as an alarm clock in the morning. There are alarm clocks with lights that come on and all the rest of it. So you can solve most of those problems if you want to.
Right. You don't have to have everything integrated into one device. You can decide what you want to work into your day. And, think about, just all the things: sleep hygiene, fitness, mindset hygiene. I think that's a great thing to be thinking about differently as well. And just the way we communicate with our family and colleagues too. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Colin. You've gotten me to think about a lot of different things in the way that I interact with my own children at home, and the spaces in our home. I'm going to be more mindful about that as well. Just to go slow to go fast in that realm. As mine get into preteen ages, they have a birthday this month, so we're going to be 11.
Children are not just for Christmas. I mean, mine are much
No.
older, and
Yes.
yeah, this is their house as well. Still,
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. Yeah. Very true. All right. I'm going to include all of the places and spaces where we can find more about you, your website, and all the good things that you're doing out in the world to get that information out there. Do you have another TEDx? Like, are you planning on doing any more speaking in the TEDx world in the
so
next few years?
the TEDx was a great tick in the box,
Mm,
but I'm slightly uneasy with TED because
mm,
TED is basically on YouTube, sell adverts. So it has to balance that. Great thing about sharing knowledge with how does the business case work? Now they're a good organization and they're quite a small organization, but they have to do that balance. I love to give talks to organizations at events where you get that interaction with people. It doesn't have to be recorded. It just get that interaction. And I learn every time that I do it.
yeah, I can imagine you get that energy from the audience and then you get the feedback as well, which is probably very helpful as well. Well, and it's on brand with you, right? Because you want to make sure that you're having that more like constant interaction that's in real time. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I do a post and it should be once a week, but I don't always make that. I have a blog once a month, because it's that balance. How can I be involved in digital wellbeing, digital detox, if I'm always posting, if I'm always using analytics? My website has no analytics. Now, I know that if you have a link to YouTube and a link to Instagram and those sorts of places, those organizations have analytics, but there are no analytics built into my website. I have no idea who goes there unless I go to Google, and Google knows everything.
That's true. It does. It does. Absolutely. Well, okay. So I'll make sure all of the ways to get in touch with you to find out more is in the show notes, including your website. Although you won't get the analytics on that, people can find you and they can keep up with you on your blog. Well, Colin, thank you again for being here. And it's been a pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, continuing to detox your way through.
I have a people meeting to go to tonight.
Yeah, we need more people interaction. So way to build that back into your schedule. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And if it resonated with you, share it with a friend or two. And until next time, the light in me honors the light in you. And as you head into the rest of your week, let your light shine through. Go slow to go fast. And thanks for listening.